Welcome back. We're excited to be talking about a film that is in a genre that I just love it. I can't get enough of. And my guest is the screenwriter, the filmmaker, and I'm going to go out on a limb with the beginning of this conversation, and I'm going to say no questions about my first guest's day job. This is John Slattery. Welcome.
Thank you.
Is that all right?
That's totally all right.
Is it okay with you if we don't talk about that?
The day job?
The show?
Fine. That's totally fine.
So you've written and directed this film.
Yep.
Talk about Mickey Scarpato. I wanted to ask you first and foremost if did the idea of the character or the name. I mean, Mickey Scarpato, sweet. I want to meet that guy.
In the presence of Phil Hoffman, you do want to meet that guy. Pete Dexter wrote a book called God's Pocket, in which exists one Mickey Scarpato. Yeah. The neighborhood is, the title of the book, God's Pocket, refers to the neighborhood they live in. Originally it was a neighborhood in North Philadelphia. It was called the Devil's Pocket because the people in the neighborhood were so sort of rough and nasty that they could take money out of the Devil's Pocket. And Pete Dexter was a sports writer in Philadelphia and got in a scrape in a bar. I'm told he was with Randall Tex Cobb, if you remember who that guy is.
I'm old enough to.
And Randall Tex Cobb saved his bacon in a bar fight, and that's one of the. And there's something like that happens in our movie. So, yeah, that's where the name and the character come from.
I do want to talk about your day job in as much as being an actor, being in front of the camera. Obviously, you've directed some episodes of Mad Men. Talk about the development process and helming as a director of film and getting Richard Jenkins, one of my favorites.
Yeah, me too.
And your coworker in
Christina Hendricks.
A different look.
Totally different.
Fantastic. How much fun, I use the word lightly, but how much fun was it to have the all-star team together to make your film?
John Turturro. Eddie Mars. I mean, the list goes on. To me, that was the idea was to sort of, I read this book a long time ago, and I thought it would make a good film. And then in the process of writing it and kind of thinking, seeing the images of what people look like, Phil, I initially sent him the script. He was the first person I sent the script, and it was for the part of Richard Shelburne, whom Richard Jenkins plays. And Phil responded that he liked the script but wanted to play Mickey. So it took me a minute to sort of refigure that. You hold on to these images, and it took me a minute to get that into my head, which made great sense. And then Richard Jenkins seemed to me the logical choice, and thank God that worked out. Christina Hendricks, I had written the script, I was directing Mad Men, and I sitting there waiting for the crew to set up a shot, and she was there on camera, and it really just the switch flipped, and I was like, wait, what? Of course, and so luckily she said yes. And then, John Turturro is just somebody who you hope, you sort of have a dream cast, and then you send the script around, and he called back. So all those people together, and there's a long list of people, New York actors who I wanted to create the world of this place. There's the location, there's the cars, and it's a late '70s period, and the clothes and the atmosphere. But it's really the people, and those people, and on down the line, that create the world that support Mickey and Jeannie and Bird and Shelburne, the sort of main characters.
And I would think it would have to be a great excitement to be working in a genre that, in some ways, can find caricature.
Yeah.
Some folks are so familiar with, not a gangster movie, but bad guys movie, whatever, whatever kind of genre. In this case, you've got all of these gifted actors together. I have to imagine the authenticity on set when you.
Well, yeah, that was important. You're finding people that would convincingly create this world, where there's casual violence, but casual in the sense that it's a currency with which they operate. If you can't get what you need, you might have to push somebody around, pull a gun on somebody. You don't want to. You'd rather go, get the question answered and go get some lunch or something. You know,
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
that's, I wanted it to be, and then it does sort of elevate into the absurd a couple of times. But that to me was what was so great about it, was that it's heavy, it's emotional, they're simple people, plain spoken, they need to do what they need to do, and then they're prepared to do things that you and I, sort of law-abiding citizens, are not prepared to do to get what they need.
And it always strikes me as an endlessly fascinating thing when you take very, very intelligent people who have a great facility as actors and then delve deeply into, I think what you alluded to, and again, I don't mean to stereotype simple people, but these characters have a different worldview, have a different outlook that is maybe more two-dimensional than ours or something like that. But talk about how much work it takes to get really gifted people to give great performances in some ways simple characters.
Well, it comes down to making choices, right? I mean, if it's to look simply rendered, then you have to eliminate all the other sort of complications to make it apparent that this is the choice this character's making. So you have to. So there's a lot of discussion, and there's a lot of or shooting one version after another, which you don't really have a lot of time, you know, in this scenario.
Sure.
You know, not a lot of money, not a lot of time. So you have to make choices, and then you have to find people that aren't afraid to make choices and aren't afraid to also make a choice where the character figures it out while the camera's turning, which is what those people do. Those, and on all those actors aren't afraid to, you know, they've done their homework, but then they stand in front of the camera and you see the moment change where the character changes, or where the character realizes that something bad's happened, or that he has to do a certain thing, and that's what those actors can do.
Right. Given that, as you say, you had probably a hard working time frame to get your film done.
Yeah.
Was there time for experimentation, or is this the kind of a group that, because they do their homework, they come to set and it's like, I got it, this is it? Did you play with it at all?
Yeah.
Lots of takes, that kind of thing?
Well, not lots of takes, but every take, you know, I mean, it's funny, when I was younger, and a lot of younger actors do this, well, you come in and decide, you know, you've done your homework, you go, I'm going to do this, and you do a take, and then you do that again, but you do it maybe even more ardently, and you have to go, well, what do you want to do that twice for? We have that one, now let's try something else. And those guys know that. So they never do the same thing twice, because it is alive, and they're working off of the other person, and that other person is doing something different. And so it isn't wildly experimental, because they know basically the ballpark that they're working in and that we're talking about. But every take is different, and some, you know, and everything they do is useful. And you go back in the edit period, and you're like, well, you know what? That he did something in that scene. You could even, you know, you can grab it and put it somewhere else. And you know, everything that those actors do is viable.
Right.
Yeah.
It's stuff you could use.
Yeah, it's just what works best in the scene off of whoever they're working with.
Right.
Yeah.
So, again, your previous directing experience in television, your first feature, how do you feel coming out of it? Are you ready to gear up for another project or take a little break?
I'm ready for a little break. We started pre-production the day we finished Mad Men last spring. We were waiting for a window where everybody would be available.
Sure.
That's the tricky part, you know, of all this.
You got all these great actors.
They're all busy. There isn't a lot of money involved, so you know, money helps solve a lot of those problems. You go, well, we'll pay you this much money to be available, and that's how sometimes that happens. But you have to get lucky, and everybody's busy, and they're all over the place. So we found this window of time, and so it went from April. We finished the thing about a week ago, and so yeah, I'm ready to lie down somewhere. But we're still shooting Mad Men, and we will be through June.
Thoughts on directing as far as looking at another project? Are you going to do it again?
Question?
It's quite all right. No, it's quite all right.
Totally.
You were thinking about vacation.
I was
got
thinking,
stuck.
I'm going to get a break here soon. Yeah, no, I would definitely like to do this again. You know, the difference between, I mean, the directing Mad Men, I'm going to do another one of those soon, is a great it's just great. I mean, the material is so good, and the actors are also great. But it's Matt Weiner's baby, you know. It's his
Sure.
show, and it's brilliantly done. And this was mine, you know. And whether it lives, dies, or somewhere in between, you know, that, and you get to make the choices, and you live by them. And I like that part of it. It's really creatively satisfying. So I'd like to. I don't know what it's going to be, but I want to do it again. Yeah.
I would have to have imagined that was going to be your answer to that
Yeah.
question. Good for you. John Slattery, thanks for coming.
Thank you for
Appreciate
having
it.
me.
Best wishes for great success with this film.
Thank you.
And I don't usually say this, but as I shake your hand, I'm going to say, go Pats.
Right on.
We're going to go with the
Pats.
Patriots in this afternoon's playoff game. John Slattery, the film is God's Pocket. Next up on In the Can, Obvious Child. Please stay tuned.